and you've always wanted to be an Elmwood Royal. This is your chance. Mom was a little more excited than I was. But I was excited. Football was everything to me. When I was 10 years old in 1977, real quick, that makes me 52 as of last week, nothing was what I wanted to do other than playing football. So as my dad and my brothers were going out on their tractors into the fields, I would be in the front yard playing football by myself. So I'd be taking the hike from the virtual center. And I'd be hut one, hut two, hike. And I'd hike the ball to myself. And then I'd hand the ball off to myself. Or I'd really switch it up and I'd throw the ball to myself. Oddly enough, I usually scored. Friday nights at our house were all about football. I got to watch my older brothers play quite often. And while they were playing, I'd be playing under the stands or near the end zones and playing our own game of football, because that's what we wanted to do. We were around other people playing football. So when that football camp came, it was awesome. I mean, I would be playing in my front yard, and in the front yard, I'd pretend to be Fran Tarkington or Terry Bradshaw or Bart Starr. We even had a picture of Bart Starr in our bedroom. I mean, me and my brother, we shared a bedroom. There was 10 of us. Not only that, we shared a bed, which you don't hear of much anymore. So football camp started, and it was awesome. You know, first day of camp came, and we were working on our conditioning. So we were jogging, and we were running. They used to call me Wiggle Butt in high school. And it was great. Towards the end of the day, I was tired, but it was a good kind of tired. Day 2 of that camp came, and we were playing football again. This time, we were working on our blocking and tackling. So we were down in our three-point stance, and it was hut one, hut two, and right then we would pop up, and we would pop the other guy across the line because we were doing what we wanted to do. It was awesome. We were playing football with other football players. You know, at the end of that day, I was tired. I had a little bit of a headache, tired again, but it was a good kind of tired. Day 3 of that camp came, and I was blindsided. And it didn't happen on the football field. I don't even remember what happened. All I remember was laying on the couch, and when I got up from the couch to go to the restroom, I blacked out. And when I blacked out, my mom got a little scared, as you might imagine, and took me to the hospital. And they determined that they were not equipped for this sort of thing. So on to the next, and on to the next, and on to the next, where they all quickly determined they were not equipped for this sort of thing until we got to the last one, where they determined that I had hydrocephalus. That's cephalus, not syphilis. I was 10. Well, at the age of 10, I was taken into surgery where they had a shunt installed into my head. Actually, it runs outside my skull all the way down to my abdomen on the outside of my skeleton, under my skin. It's something that I have even till this day. So at this point, the doctors came in and they said, "Mr. Wagner, I'm sorry, but your football career is over." Over? How can my football career be over? It hasn't even started yet. I had to reimagine my life without football. I didn't think I could do it. As a 10-year-old boy, I quickly became the water boy for the Signet Royals, which the Signet Royals were the junior high team, and they fed up to the Elmwood Royals. Every time we'd go back in for checkups, I would beg my mom, "Mom, we asked them if I could put my helmet back on." And my mom was awesome. She would, and she'd ask them, and she would plead with them, and they would say no. No football. Just go live your life. That became the reoccurring theme throughout my entire life, through all of my medical maladies, was just go live your life. So that's what I did. At this point of the story, I have to tell you that this is my story. And it's part of what makes me unique, but you have a story as well. What makes you unique? Think about what it is that you have that sets you apart, you or your company. That's what I want you to be thinking about over the next 45 minutes or so as we continue to have this conversation. Think about what it is that sets you apart. For the next 33 years, I just went and lived my life. I met and married my wife, Connie. And yes, that is my real hair. Man, I look good. So did she. We moved to Chicago back in 1991, and we had 3 amazing children. Their names are Grant, Jessica, and Colin. But in 1992, I was on one of my health kicks. So again, I was running, and I was on my health kick, and I was running, and I maybe ran a mile. It was pathetic. So when I got to the end of that mile, I sprinted towards the end, and it kind of felt good. But I went inside and took a shower and had a cup of coffee, made a cup of coffee. Believe it or not, when it's 92, even coffee still sounds good some days. But I had that cup of coffee, and I sat down to watch a Cubs game and read the Chicago Tribune. And when I did, I noticed that my fingers didn't feel quite right. They were a little numb. And then when I felt my face, it was almost like I'd been to the dentist's office and the Novocaine hadn't worn off yet. After further review, I noticed that I did have numbness down the entire right side of my body. Numbness down the entire right side of my body. Well, that can't be good. So we went to the emergency room, and I was checked into the hospital. There I was for a few days where they were trying to figure out what was going on. While I was there, they determined that I needed to have what's called an angiogram. An angiogram is where they take a needle that's attached to a tube, and they route it up into a vein. And for me, it was a vein took me to my brain. And once they were in my brain, or my cranial area, they shot a dye into the needle. And the needle then released this dye, and it showed all the different vessels within my brain. As I'm being wheeled in, the nurse looks at me and she says, "Mr. Wagner, I'm surprised you're doing so well." Well, most people in your condition are in a coma. Now, I'm not sure if she was trying to make me feel better, but if she was, it didn't work. So as they're routing this needle into my vein, they said, "Well, Mr. Wagner, we need to route this into your vein, a vein that's closest to your brain as possible." So they went in through my groin. I didn't think that was that funny, and neither did you. Well, the procedure went fine, but the results came back a few days later, and the doctor came in, and again, he was very glum. He said, you have a cavernous malformation. A cavernous malformation, or a cav-mal, if you will, it's a malformed blood vessel that can form anywhere in your body. Mine just happened to have formed in my brainstem. So, what are we going to do? What is next? So they went and they researched as much as they could, and this was 1992. There wasn't much available. So they came back and they said, "I'm sorry, but you're not a candidate for surgery. You're not a candidate for anything. You just need to go live your life." And they said, "Unless there are no other options." So again, that just go live your life became a reoccurring theme. I asked if there were any limitations, and they said, "Well, no, there aren't any limitations, but we recommend you not do much weightlifting." Weightlifting? Well, that's easy. I'll give it up in a heartbeat. I was never very disciplined about it in the first place. And then this is a sad point where I had to inform my wife that I wouldn't be able to do the laundry or take out the trash or sweep for the rest of my life. Much like you, she laughed and she said, "Guess again." But they said in the end to just go live your life. That's it. Just go live your life. Then in 1994, early in 1994, my shunt had gone bad, so they had to replace it. And then towards the end of 94, I was on a trip with a colleague to Davenport, Iowa, where we were doing some work. And towards the end of the day, we finished the day. We went to our respective rooms. And the next morning, he got up and he went downstairs and he went to the lobby and he waited for me. And he waited. And he waited. So he called my room. Now he knew that I hadn't left without him because he had driven to the hotel, to Davenport. And so he called the manager on duty once he got no answer in my room. Got a hold of the manager on duty, and the manager called, and he couldn't get through. So they ended up breaking down my door, and they found me in a coma. Then I was taken to Davenport, to the Genesis Medical Center there in Davenport, Iowa, where they determined that they were not equipped for this sort of thing, and they took me by squad back to Chicago. And there they determined that my shunt had gotten infected, this newly installed shunt, and they determined that I was then shunt dependent. So if anything happens and my shunt goes down, so do I. As you might imagine, that also leads me to call my wife quite often and let her know when I'm up for the morning. She likes to know those sorts of things, I'm sure you can guess. But in the end, they said to just right about now, you're again wondering, where is all this going? And I'm asking you, I told you to just think about it on your own. Think about where this might take you from your perspective, what makes you unique. So come back with me and begin to think about your story and think about how what you have makes you unique. It's incredible to be able to think about not only what makes us unique, but how we can use that for the betterment of the world. But just, I'm going to keep saying that. And then fast forward to March 3rd of 2011. It was one of those really cold but not snowy days, and I drove up to I drove up to Cleveland from Columbus, about a 2-hour ride, and it was very, like I said, cold, but it was nothing out of the ordinary. I was in my brand new 2011 Ford Taurus. It was black leather seats. I love that car. Actually, I drove that car here today. It's got 192,000 miles on it, so it's doing quite well. But as I drove, I really didn't notice anything. I got to this all-day training session a little bit late. And when I arrived there, everything was okay. I had to park towards the top of the garage because I'd gotten there late, and made it to my training session. And towards the end of the training session, things started to get blurry. And I had to squint with both eyes. I had 2 good eyes back then. And I had to realize that I wasn't able to see quite right. I thought it was just because I was tired, because I'd gotten up early that day to drive to Cleveland. Well, after the training session was over, I made my way out of the building and off to my car, and I got to the parking garage, and I arrived at the top floor of the parking garage because that's where my car was, because I'd gotten there late, and there she was, that beautiful black car. I walked up to it, and when I did, it just seemed like everything was so close to my car. I couldn't figure out why everything was so close. I managed to get the door open and creeped inside, and once I did creep inside, I started it up and hit my reverse and put it in reverse, and then all of a sudden, not everything seemed so close. Well, I looked in the rear view camera and I noticed that nothing was close. It was all fine. I wonder if there are times in your life where you need to just look in the rear view camera and look at how far you've come. I mean, there are a lot of people here that have been doing this for 32 plus years. And there are others that are just starting. But still, looking in the rear view camera every once in a while to get an idea of where you've come is really, really important. So I beg you to continue to do that. Well, as I said, I made it out of the parking spot fine, and I started to make my way down those 7 flights in that parking garage. And it took forever, because everything seemed to be right next to me. I was going as slow as I possibly could, but I had these people behind me, and they were encouraging me. I mean, they were honking their horns. I mean, even one guy told me that I was number 1. It was great. Well, I made my way down, and I finally got to the bottom, and I hit my new nemesis, the toll booth. The toll booths are one of those places where I can never get close enough or too close, just because my 3-dimensional vision is gone. So having lost that, it makes things rather difficult. And toll booths, I'm sure they're not that easy for anyone else, but they're extra special for me. I made it through this one okay, and I made it out on this road. And when I did, all of a sudden I realized that I had no idea where I'm going. Well, I made it to this next stoplight, and when I did, I used another one of the new features on this car. With the GPS, I hit the home button. Don't we all need to do that at times? Just hit the home button. That'll take us back to base, back to where we're comfortable. At times, we need to do that. Well, I did, and then made my way home. But on my way home, I stopped at every rest area. And in every rest area, I actually would stop and I'd call my wife. At the first one, I called her and I said, Connie, I'm not sure what's going on. My eyes aren't working quite right. At this point, I had 2 good eyes, just like the rest of you. But I knew that something was going on. And I thought it might just been because I was tired. So I would tell her that I was going to take a nap, and I would try to, but I'd get frustrated because I couldn't sleep, and then I'd get back in the car seat, and I'd get back on the road. This is the point where I have to tell you that, and this is my confession, that the last place that I should have been is on the road. Because my biggest blind spot was in the car seat, the driver's seat. I made it home. It took me 4 hours to make that 2-hour car ride. And I arrived home that night, and I just went to the couch because I knew the kids were already in bed, and my wife was probably sleeping. So I didn't want to bother them. And then on March 4th of 2011, at about 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up. And when you're over the age of 40, and it's about 3 o'clock in the morning, there's really only one place you got to go. Well, going there, everything seemed to be so much darker than normal. It was actually strange because it was almost as like my wife had moved the furniture or something, but maybe the power's out. Well, when I got to the restroom, I realized, as I went to turn on the light switch, that the lights didn't come on. Maybe the power is out. Well, when I turned towards the mirror and looked towards the mirror, I realized that there was some light coming, and so the power must not be out, but I could tell there was some light through these slits in the bottom of my eyes. But there was nothing that I could do to open either one of my eyes unless I tilted my head back and looked out of the bottom of those slits and lifted an eye with my finger. So this is how I would see for the next 6 months if I wanted to see anything at all. I was blind. Well, my wife came down and she heard the commotion, and she was horrified when she saw my face because it was swollen and my eyelids were shut and they wouldn't open. We talked about what to do. We decided to get the kids off to school, and then we made our way to the emergency room. In the emergency room, the doctors, and it took forever because you had to go through all the tests and you had to wait. The doctor came in and he said, "Mr. Wagner, I'm sorry, but it appears one of the cavitous malformation in your brainstem has bled, and it's putting pressure on the nerves that control your vision. We're recommending that you have brain surgery." Brain surgery? Wait a minute. They told me never to let someone operate on my brainstem. What's changed? The problems you have are only going to become worse and more frequent. Worse and more frequent. Worse and more frequent. Those are the words that I heard for the next 27 days. They recommended that there's only one guy. And this one guy is in Phoenix, Arizona. And that is where I needed to go if I wanted to have brain surgery. Elective brain surgery. That's the strange part of all of this. But when I got there, I met him the day before. And then we did that. He did brain surgery on me. In the blink of an eye, it was over. This thing that I had been dreading for 21 years, or whatever, 19 years, it was over, just like that, in the blink of an eye. Do you ever wonder, are there things that you're dreading doing that if you just did them, they'd be over, and you wouldn't have to worry about it anymore? You wouldn't have to keep putting it on your calendar or your to-do list every day. But if you just did it, it'd be over and it wouldn't be that bad. That's what I experienced. But for the next 6 months, I was blind. Being blind is awfully hard. One of the hardest thing that I've ever gone through. It's humbling when you sit on your front porch and you have to wait on a colleague to give you a ride. It's frustrating when your wife does move the furniture. It's awkward when you walk into the wrong restroom and use it. Those are some of the experiences that I had. During that time, I just wanted to get through it. I can't tell you how bad I wanted to just get through it and get my sight back. I made a deal. I made a deal with God. And the deal was that if I could get my sight back, I would live to help other people that are struggling with their issues as well. That is why I'm here today, to help other people that are struggling. Now, you may not be one of those that are struggling. You may have everything going just your way, but I'm willing to bet you, of the number of people that are here today, that there are people that are struggling with something. And if you're not, you can be an encourager for those other people that are struggling. You can help them. You can give them a hand, just like I'm trying to give you a hand in order to help them and lift them up. So that is the deal that I made for all of us. You know, there are many people that encouraged me along the way. One of those persons was my daughter, Jess. She's 13 at the time, and she wrote me a letter for Father's Day. Would it be all right if I read it to you? No? Yes. Okay. Dear Dad, happy Dad's Day. I hope you have a great day because you definitely deserve it. All the cards and TV commercials always say, "My dad's the best," but they're all lying. You're the best ever. Sure, other people's dads are great. They're younger than you, and they're sportier, and they're funnier. But you've got something that they don't have: bravery. Even after everything you're going through, you still get out of bed in the morning. You still joke around. You go out and play with us and cook on the grill, even though you only have half of one good eye. But you do more still. You inspire me. You teach me that even though you go through the most toughest and grueling things, if you just believe that God is right there with you through everything, believe that everything turns out okay in the end, believe that sometimes the only thing you can do is hope beyond hope, then maybe, just maybe, you'll make it out alive. Not always unscathed, but alive. And giving me that hope, that sense of belief, well, I'd take that over Dad with 2 good eyes any day. Love, Jess. When is the last time that you received a letter like that? Let me ask a different question. When is the last time you wrote a letter like that? I know for a fact that you have people in your world, people in your sphere of influence that need to hear what they mean to you. It doesn't have to be about 1 good eye versus 2 good eyes, but they still need to hear. They need to hear from you that you love them, that you support them, and that they mean the world to you. I'm going to give you 3 minutes, and I just want you to think about, write, and put it all down on a paper, maybe in a text. Maybe get up and go out and call them. I don't care. But do what you need to do to make sure that you let that person know of the impact that they're having on your life. Talk to you in 3 minutes. About 30 seconds left. Okay. If you haven't finished yet, I encourage you to finish. Finish before you leave here, because if you don't finish before you leave here, you're never going to finish it. I want you to finish it. If you have finished, just think about the impact that you're going to have on that person. I mean, I can see them smiling on the other end of that message right now. They got that big old smile. Don't you love that? When you've had the ability to tell somebody else of their impact on your world. Not only is that going to make their life so much better, but it's going to make your life better as well, because you can take that and replicate it time and time and time again. I look forward to that. I hope you all will tell me about that someday. And if you ever want to contact me, there's all kinds of stuff either in my book or on my website where you can contact me. Let me know of the impact you're having. I'd love to hear that. I think it'd be cool. Well, you know, there's many encouragers in my family. One of those encouragers was my wife. My wife would, she would encourage me to go for walks. And what she meant by walks was different than what I had intended for walks. I mean, she took me out onto this treacherous terrain. I'm a guy with very little eyesight, and she wants me to walk down this sidewalk. And there's people coming from behind and people coming in front of us. And I mean, look at that, those ledges on either side. And then the lips, I mean, the undulation of the sidewalk, it was terrible. So as we got through that, that was the first phase. But she encouraged me to go for walks. She was the one that helped me to get to where I am today. And then I did have that oblivious optimism. That oblivious optimism comes from my dad. My dad, he was a great guy, and everybody loved him. His name was Wally. Yes, Wally Wagner. A great guy. He is the one that had that oblivious optimism, and he passed it on down to me. And I'm glad that I have it. And then there was another guy who was really optimistic. His name was Bill, but Bill introduced me to this guy named Kerry. And Kerry was a mentor of mine for a while, and he helped me. He told me, well, he listened to my story, and he told me, great story. I think you can do something, to help other people, but don't quit your day job. Just keep doing what you're doing and keep working on what you want to do. So I did. I didn't quit my day job, and I went from job to job to job until finally I got to a point where I couldn't take it anymore. I had to make the leap. And this is when I made the leap, and I started my own company, and my company is called Radical Vision. And a radical vision is all about helping other people to embrace their own personal blindness to achieve a greater vision for your life. Embrace your own personal blindness. So we're blind. At times, we don't see everything that we should be seeing. Some of what we should be seeing is the positive impact that we're having on the world. But there's also the negative impact we're having as well. If we would be able to see that, then we would be able to embrace it and move forward. And yes, I did write a book. It's based on my story of having brain surgery 8 years ago, and it's called Sometimes It Does Take a Brain Surgeon. Oh, and by the way, copies of that book are available still. I will sign one still. I don't ask for any money from me. I do ask for a donation to charity. If you are willing to donate to charity, that's great. If you don't have any money for charity, that's okay. I'll still give you the book. So having said that, a large part of the book is based on blind spots. And the blind spots are those things that are keeping us from seeing what we should be seeing. Much like a blind spot in your car, you're over your back right shoulder, you have a blind spot because your mirrors are not detecting everything you should be seeing. So if you turn your shoulder and you look, you can see through your blind spot, most likely. For me, it's a little different. My blind spot's a little bit bigger than most people's. But that is essentially what a blind spot is. And I help people to embrace their own personal blindness to achieve greater vision, but part of that vision, it's including seeing through their blind spots. So the process that we go through is we take people from a point of blindness to sight to vision. That's the process. So when you have blindness, you're not seeing everything you should be. When you have sight, you begin to embrace your blind spots. You begin to see your own blind spots, but, I said that wrong, you can't see your own blind spots, or they wouldn't be called blind spots. You need to have other people to help you. You need to enlist the help of your inner circle to help you see your blind spots. What is it that I'm not seeing that I should be? And then when you begin to have vision, like I have a vision, that's where it all happens. Because you're going to be able to help so many other people and to share your vision with those people. So this is what the passenger in the car that I'm driving sees. Who in their right mind would get in the car with that guy? He has no eye open, and he's smiling, so he must be happy. But the thing is that the passenger in the car seat, she sees, or he or she, they see my blind spot. They see what I don't see. They tell me when something's coming, or my head's on a swivel if they're not there, but they're the ones that help me see my blind spot. That's my physical blind spot, but there's also the mental blind spots, or the spiritual blind spots that we all have. Now, this morning I talked about the Johari window. The Johari window is a tool about self-awareness, and it's there to help people. It's not my tool. I didn't create it. It was created in 1955 by two British psychologists. Their names happen to have been Joe and Harry, hence the Joe-Harry window. Now, thank goodness Harry didn't get top billing, because that would have been weird. But anyway, the Joe-Harry window is all about self-awareness. And I could walk through that, but due to time, I'm going to skip over that for today. And I'll tell you that it's really important. But I want you to think about what would happen if you started to see the things that you're not seeing. Think about maybe how you've been passed over for a promotion, or possibly you've not gotten the job that you've applied for. Possibly that date didn't work out and didn't end up becoming a second date. What is it? What happened? You're never going to know the real truth, most likely, in many cases. But what would happen if you could tell what that was? What are those things that are keeping you from the next level or from the next thing that you want to do? What would happen? Would you be able to go on a nice trip? Would you be able to take a sabbatical? Would you be able to do something else? Who knows? Think about that, though. What would it mean? I used to be the guy that laughed at other people's problems. I was always so incredulous why they were so deep in thought. But then all of this happened, and my life changed forever. I used to be an IBM sales rep, and that was all I wanted to do. I just wanted to make money. But then, 8 years ago, that whole thing changed. And I'm coming to a point where I've understood that my true purpose in life is to help other people. And like I said, I have a lot of people that help me. This is my family. That's Connie and me, obviously, and then there's Winkin, Blinkin, and Nod. No, that's not really their names. That is good, though. Thanks, Gene and Lisa. But I'll tell you, Winkin and Blinkin, Grant, Colin, and Jess, they've helped me as well. And as we took these pictures, I always thought, it's kind of funny because I'm the only one winking in these pictures. Wouldn't it be neat if someone else winked with me? So the next year I asked them to wink with me, and they did. Look at that. Aren't they a good bunch of winkers? Now, of course, some are better winkers than others, but they tried really hard. They tried to be a part of me. But it got me to thinking, wouldn't it be neat if other people winked with me when they were in pictures? So I started to do that, and even my mom was supporting me. My mom is going to be 90 on August 30th, so wish her a happy birthday. But it's great to be able to have other people that will embrace your uniqueness, what makes you unique and what sets you apart, and they do that for themselves as well because it gets them thinking, okay, if this is him, what do I have? What can I do? And then there's other people that wink with me. Even recently, I've had other people wink at me, like all these people here at this conference that I was at, where they all joined in with me, and some of them open their mouths, some of them pout, some of them do different things with their faces. And then recently, I even had another chance to have other people wink with me, and there they are. It was just this week where I had my friends Jean and Lisa. They winked with me. And then my buddy Pat and Jeff, they winked with me. And then more. It just became a huge thing, this revolution or evolution or whatever you want to call it, where we had multiple people winking with me. And then Pat showed up again. How do you do that, Pat? And then there's, obviously you see some of the young ladies there, and they're trying to wink, and they're not doing a very good job. So now Pat, I don't know if he got some bad crawfish, something happened. So Pat did a head turn, and then we lost one of the ladies, and then I found her, and there she was, winking off by herself. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why that is. But anyway, and there's my buddy Paul and Ro. Is Ro here today? I knew Ro was here earlier. And then one of my other friend. So yeah, there's been lots of people that have been able to wink with me and to be able to help them to start to think about what it means to embrace your own personal blindness. Even Mike was looking into the sky. There's been lots of winkers, lots of pictures, and I've appreciated all of them. I appreciate all of you for winking with me. But I'll tell, and there was Mark. Another winker, some more winkers there. You recognize some of those. And then there's even more. Oh, and this is one of my favorite winkers. I'm not sure what they had in the orange juice cups other than mimosa, but they were having fun. And it was really fun to be able to start to help people to get that mindset, to think about what makes them different. And then I met this guy named Dave. And I'm like, Dave, I want to tell you my story. I want to tell you why I want you to wink with me. I think it would be cool, because it helps you to embrace, what makes you unique. And he's like, oh, is Dave here? No. I said, Dave, this is what makes me unique. He's like, oh, well, let me show you what makes me unique. And he starts to lift up his pant leg, and I think he's going to show me his socks because they're unique. Well, he didn't show me his socks. He showed me his leg. I had no idea. It just blew me away. Because we all have something that's unique, but we just don't show it. Now, my uniqueness is on my face. I'm a walking billboard. Other people don't have that much luck, if you will. So winking is important. And then I've created a tool, and the tool is called Wink, as you might imagine. And Wink is all about helping people to embrace what makes them different. And Wink stands for Y is important, I is for intentionality, the N is for new way of thinking, and the K is for kinesthetic. Just do it. Take action. So who's next? Who's next to wink with Wagner? I've had a lot of you already have been able to come up, and not come up now, but if you can come up after this speech, I'd be happy to wink with you and post your pictures as well. If you would let me do that, that would be great. But who's next to embrace your own personal blindness? Now, there is the question and answer period, After this period, I have a short story. So if there are any questions that I can answer, I'd love to answer them. Are there any at this point? Or can we just go to the last story? I'm going to do that. So the story is taking a different spin. A different spin. I tell it differently than I used to. Because the impact that it's had on me, I want to make sure it's having that impact on you. I want you to be able to feel where I am. And where I was, imagine, well, I started this program at the Ohio School for the Blind. And at the Ohio School for the Blind, we work with mostly middle school and high school students to help them with life beyond school. So there's this knitting club we wanted to have because a number of the kids wanted to knit. And we did this. We put this together. First night of the knitting club, we went to Joann Fabrics. Who here has ever been to Joann's? I don't know if I've ever been there, but maybe I had. Imagine as you're walking through Joann's and you have 10 of your friends from high school with you. And you're a high school student, 18 years old, and you're bumping through Joann's. You have the best vision out of all 10 or 11. And as you walk through the store, you have to go from the front right corner of the store to the back left. So as you go, you have to weave your way in the knitting club to the back left corner. In the knitting club, you have to weave your way to the back left corner. In the knitting club, maybe I'm not saying this right. Somebody got it. All right. So they're bumping and they're going through all the different areas of the Joann Fabrics, and they finally get to there. And I was amazed at how the kids wanted to have a certain color of yarn. Why did it matter? Well, it mattered because their mom's favorite color was blue. And they were knitting a scarf for their mom. That's why it mattered. But I was amazed how the leaders of the club wanted to have the thickest yarn possible. And they wanted to have the largest needles possible and even a modified loom that would help the students to be able to knit. So they got the knitting supplies and we made our way back out of the store and we went back to the school, but that was it for that week. So we waited a whole other week with anticipation to get to the knitting club. Well, we got to the knitting club and it was in the original lobby for the Ohio School for the Blind. It was built back in the 50s. It had plush leather brown seats and tables scattered here and there, some folding chairs as well. There was even a piano right in the middle of the room. So as we walked into this room, the students actually had gotten there a little bit early. One of my students, I'll call him friend, he had already started knitting because he was in good with the main leader of the club, and she had helped him to cast on. Now, are there any knitters here? Yeah, I see a hand or two, maybe. So you know what casting on is. When you cast on, you put the yarn on and everything else is getting set up so you can start to knit. Once you start to knit, then on a modified loom, you have to do it in a certain way. And friend, the gentleman that I was telling you about, he was having some trouble. I walked over to him and I said, "Friend, how you doing?" He's like, "I'm having problems. This yarn is on, I can tell that, but I have to," let me see if I have the next slide. I have to get to a point where, if you look at my hand, I have to get to a point where I grab the right yarn on the bottom and I take it up over top of the peg and over top of the other yarn that's already on there that's been casted on, and I take it through this groove. So I'm taking a hook and I'm using the hook to get into the groove. Now imagine how difficult it is for me to explain this to you. Imagine how hard it is to explain this to someone that's visually impaired with cognitive disabilities and he's just had a rough go for 18 years. but he really wanted to knit this scarf. So he finally, as he's working through it, and it was one of those things where I just wanted to do it for him because I knew then what he needed to do, and he had to get through it. So he had to get through it on his own because it wasn't about me doing it for him. It was about him learning how to do it. So he finally got it, and he got it up over top of the peg, and he did it. I can't tell you how happy he was, but he didn't know it. I said, Fred, you did it. You did it. I did it? I did it. I made a loop. I made a loop. I made a loopy. Just then, someone in the back left corner of the room heard him, and they said, he made a loop. He made a loopy. He made a loopy. And then over there, someone heard, he made a loopy. He made a loopy. Then the entire room, they started in. He made a loopy. He made a loopy. 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 It was awesome because that one small loop changed the entire complexion of that club. That one small loop changed the entire complexion of that evening. That one small loop changed the entire complexion of my friend. But the best part is, he got to give a gift to his mom. And you can imagine his mom's surprise when she opened that box on Mother's Day. She opened the box, and it was the scarf. And it was blue. That was the best. As you leave here today, I'd like to leave you with 3 things. Think about how that yarn really represents our lives. And our lives are really long. So, as you think about how that yarn is long, my friend's yarn was only 18 years long. But then there's the needles or the looms that we have in our lives. And they're like the events that come up and happen. But then there's the stitches or the loops that we have that come out of our lives. And that's what we make of them. That's what we make out of our lives. Just remember that life is not going to go as planned. Be open to reimagining your life. And as always, never forget where your yarn came from. That's where my yarn came from. Thank you for spending your time with me today. I am Brian. Lots of people have pronounced my name Brian with an I or Brian with a Y. There's no mistaking how to spell my name. My name is Brian, and that's with one I. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Appreciate it. All righty. And thank you all very much. I appreciate you all being here and sticking around today. With that, we are wrapping up, and we look forward to seeing you all and all of your friends at Belterra next year. Once again, a big shout out to the entire South Bend team. The Aloft, the Century Center. You guys put on a great show for us. Thank you very much. Truly appreciate it. We'll see you guys soon. Safe travels home. Bye-bye.